Thank you so much for being here tonight. Olivier, it's really nice to have you back here. It's been a little bit, I think the last time was a WASP network, so it's really great to have you back with also a different type of geopolitical thriller that talks about the world today, from the recent past to what's happening next. As you mentioned at the introduction, it's a sort of free adaptation of the book by Giuliano da Empoli, The Wizard of the Kremlin, and you worked on the adaptation with another really amazing writer, Emmanuel Carrère. Maybe we can just start easily by talk about the approach that you and Emmanuel took from the original book to make it into the screenplay to direct the film.
Well, it's been a long process, but bottom line, we were not sure there was a film in that book. I mean, it felt like there was a film, but we were genuinely not sure because it was long, it was complex, it dealt with politics that are always a tricky subject, and it didn't really have the structure of a film. I mean, there was, I genuinely had my doubts. I mean, and everything felt like trouble. Just making a film, we knew we would never shoot in Russia. They would never let us, and we knew that we had to make it in English. I mean, in some ideal world, I would have made it in Russian. So I had my reservations and my doubts, but we kind of gave it a chance, Emmanuel Carrère and myself, and we started having a couple of meetings, with conversations to see if there was some kind of way of dealing with the issues of the book, and to our surprise, I mean, we found very early, very simple solutions that completely allowed us. I mean, which turned the book into something that potentially could become a film, and for a while everything was just extremely simple because once we had solved our major problems, it kind of happened. I mean, we wrote it very fast. I mean, everybody was happy with with the early versions of the screenplay. We never had major problems. We started running into problems when we got to the financing part of the film. That's another story. But
Isn't that always a long story?
No, but I mean, it's what was remarkable for me about the book, and what really made me want at least to have a shot at it, is that it dealt with something no movie deals with, meaning modern politics. Not the consequence of politics, not the social part of politics, but the fabric, the very fabric of politics. In what sense politics are a language of their own, and which it uses different tools, different techniques, but ultimately it's about something that is very simple and that has never changed: how to access power, and once you're in power, how to keep power, keep your grab on power. So so what was fascinating about the book is that it kind of deconstructed the modern modalities of modern politics.
I mean, you mentioned it really briefly, but there's like two problems that are obvious. The book doesn't look like it can be adapted into a film. It's a lot of internal discussion. It's people at the table talking.
It's a monologue.
Yeah, so you have to think, how can I translate this into a film where it's not just people speaking? Then you have to deal with the Russian problem, which is, I can't shoot there, I can't get Russian actors.
I can't get Russian furniture. I can't get the Russian clothes. I can't get Russian, historical footage. I mean,
And Putin is not available to shoot, so it's very, very difficult. So I have to say the casting is quite remarkable. Jude Law is an amazing Putin. So if anything happened to the real one, there's someone that's just ready to go out there. But also working with Paul Dano, with one of the most exciting actors working these days. I wanted to ask, are you got Paul to agree to this, other than like it's a movie by Olivier Assayas. It's going to be in English and it's going to be very difficult, creative condition. But I wanted to hear from you how you approach Paul, and then I want to hear from Paul, like how he thought and imagined the role and how to construct that very unpleasant character to make it at someone we want to follow for 2 hours with thoughts, discussion, and someone that only going to present one side of the story.
Well, you know, it's I'm not going to give you a list of great movies with very bad guys. I think there's plenty of them. I mean, honestly, you know, the exception is when you don't have bad guys. No, I mean, it was a joy to work with Paul. I mean, he was, since the beginning of the project. We had never met, but I had a sense that he was the one American actor of his generation who could reinvent that could be Vadim Baranov. It's not like I had other options or other ideas. I mean, since the start, I felt that Paul embodied exactly what I was looking for. I mean, someone who is both likable, that you relate to, and at the same time is mysterious. And you constantly have a sense that he's much more than what he seems to be on the surface, and I think it's a very complex, and it's a complex part, and I think that it needed a great actor, and so, you know, I had no reservations. I mean, I had no doubts, and I was just so happy when Paul agreed to do it.
Oh God, okay. Just so we have to talk about each other in front of each other. It's terrible. Yeah, I was so happy to hear from Olivier. I was a fan of his, and I had not read the book, and I would not have known that it was a tough book to adapt, because I thought the script was beautifully written, extremely compelling. Rich and dense and challenging, highly intellectual. So it felt, it was exciting to read it, and I felt like it was there on the page. Olivier and I spoke. Olivier is not only been a great filmmaker for a very long time, but he's an incredibly kind, incredibly intelligent man. And it turned out that he's worked with the same crew for a very long time, a wonderful feeling on the set, a great group of people. So despite the tough subject matter, I had a very good time making this film, the people that I was surrounded by. In terms of approaching the character, I suppose when I read it, I was compelled as a reader, so I don't think I ever thought too much about, is the audience going to like him or not, or how do you walk that line. I think it was more about understanding that person, and one of the things that I found really interesting is that he was not somebody who I don't think you can write off as being born evil. In fact, he was trying to be an artist for a bit, you know, which I think it's a noble profession. I think, you know, for me, there's basic building blocks that you begin to work with, like the fact that his grandfather was an aristocrat who was kind of eaten by the Bolsheviks, and then his father was a kind of a good boy communist who was then eaten by his times, and so I think there was something deeply in this person that wanted to be a part of their times and not be a victim of them. And he also lost the woman he loves to this sort of new Russian, gangster money. And I think at a certain point, he went to this mercenary form of television from the theater, which is already a fall from grace. He was doing reality TV. Like, I don't mean TV. He was doing. You saw the film. You saw the casting session. And then his gifts are rewarded. And then the path becomes much darker. I was really compelled when I saw the film. I think one of the things that I discovered, even though I'd studied it for so long and studied so much around it, when I saw it the first time, was the scene towards the end where he is playing with his kid. And I didn't know this when making it, but for me that became a really key scene as a viewer. Because I was very uncomfortable seeing that after knowing what he had done, right? And in that way, I think a new layer of the film was presented to me, which was that it was also about complicity in some way. So I think it's, it was an experience that I was compelled by the whole time while making it. There was always another something to turn over in a scene or another piece of research that would come through, that was exciting. So it was a very, very rich experience.
I mean, you've made political films or film about characters that are not necessarily amazing public figure. It's sort of different from even Carlos or West Network or some of the film you've tackled in the past, but it's a very, very current situation that's completely evolving, yet set at a very specific time, which goes to, Donbass and then the early invasion of Ukraine. That's where the book is at, but you adapt with someone. Were you ever thinking about maybe changing more, going further into what's happening, or you knew this is what I want to do?
I honestly didn't feel. I mean, it's a long story and it's a long film, and I didn't feel like adding a chapter, and I think it would have felt very repetitive. And I think basically we understand what I mean. We know the next chapter, or we know it all too well, I think, I genuinely think that, the logic is in place that will bring disaster. And I think, to me, of course, this movie deals with the events that led to the invasion of Ukraine, but it's also in more general terms about modern politics. And I think it's to me, it's not exactly it's not just the story of the rise to power of Vladimir Putin, nor is it about the war in Ukraine. It's about the disaster of modern politics. And what was fascinating for me in the book, and which is that it is situated in the place and time when modern politics were invented, were defined, and which is this is not a political film. It's a film about politics, and again about modern politics and how modern politics came to be. I mean, that's where it impacted first, and then it rippled through the whole world. And I think it's not very difficult to see the analogies with what has been happening in the States in recent months. or what has been happening in various countries in Europe, also during during the past few years. So I think that instead of being specific and going into the technical details of how and what, and how Ukraine was invaded, and how the war the full-on war in Ukraine started, it's more about what's wrong with modern politics in general, and the way post-internet, post-social media, things got genuinely extremely eerie and scary.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are shown in the film, but also come from the book. It's that we talk about, which is how you manipulate people with social media, how it can be both, and how it's going to change everything from there. And that's fairly recent.
It is propaganda. Yeah. You know, it's just. I mean, there has been propaganda ever since there is media, there is propaganda. In a way or another, and when there is a war, part of the war is happening through propaganda. So it's again, I mean, this movie is very much about the modern iteration of something that is timeless, that has always been happening, which is again the use of propaganda as a war machine. It's there's nothing new about it, except it's a shape shifter.
But it's something that is a little bit different from films you made before, and
oh yes, because I made movies. When I make movies like Wasp Network or Carlos or Demon Lover, you know, in a certain way, I make movies that are political movies. I mean, they deal with they deal with modern society. They deal with people who are victims of their times, like Carlos, for instance. This one is more about a reflection on politics, which is something that movies don't do that much. You know, it's again. I mean, you know, it's. You recognize a political movie when you see one, but a movie about politics, it's not that common. It's not that common, and that was exciting, obviously, for me. You know, it was doing something I had not done, and something that has certainly not been done that way in contemporary cinema.
Were you tempted to make it longer and like as a series with different episodes, and then you can work with Paul for a few years too, you know?
No, that was never on the table.
I wouldn't mind seeing more, you know, or like current episodes.
Yeah.
You working?
Write them.
I will talk to the producers. Can you talk a little bit about, like, you obviously you said you couldn't work in Russia, so you went to Latvia, yes. And you stayed there for a few months. Can you talk a little bit about the production aspect, and for you, Paul, to be working on there?
Well, you know, it's obviously, again, the difficulty was that we had no access to Russia. In a way, you know, we are another, so we had to find substitutes. And there's a lot of locations, and there's a lot of very diverse locations. We start, and so the first thing we did in the process of making the film is just figuring out where we could shoot, and our first approach was disastrous, because if we wanted to get things right, we needed to shoot in 4 or 5 different countries, which made no sense and made the film economically impossible. It was impossible to finance that kind of shoot and that kind of budget. So we had to decide on one country which would stand, which we could use to stand for many other countries. And the best candidate was Latvia, because it has ancient architecture, it has Soviet architecture, it has modern architecture, it has castles, it has beautiful landscapes, it has dachas, because it's where a lot of the Russian nomenclatura went for holidays. So there's those beautiful wooden houses. We also found in Latvia the Baranov's house, which was one of the toughest locations to find, and we got it right. We got it right very early in the process. So yeah, it's and we worked with the Latvian crew, as you saw in the credits, and one major choice was to use Latvian actors. English-speaking Latvian actors, and and decide that we would not try to have some kind of homogeneous version of the accents. I mean, we used English-speaking Latvians who had different accents because they learned their English. I mean, like the guy who plays Yeltsin. I mean, he spent years in Kentucky or something. I mean, in some, so he had some kind of weird American accent.
Who doesn't want Yeltsin from Kentucky?
But no, but I mean, the thing was, as long as we were, I mean, we were in Latvia. Let's use Latvian actors. Yeah. Let's channel some of the energies. And those guys, they never really have a chance to be in movies because there's very few movies made in Latvia. There's a theater culture, there's a stage culture that Paul is much more aware of than myself, because he actually saw plays in Latvian. He did. I didn't have the courage.
We had a great crew there, though, and we're really lucky we found the place, because it's a very challenging film to physically produce. It's sort of an intimate epic, right? It spans a lot of time and change, and when the character sort of has that kind of journey, it's a lot of locations, and so, which is something I felt really excited about and felt lucky to get to go do. It's hard to make a movie like this, so when you get the chance to work with something that has that much scope in a way, and then how do you pull it off? And luckily Olivier and his team did, and we felt very welcome there. There was one location in the country where I remember they were like, the Russian border is like right over there, and I was like, like, okay.
I'll stop 50 meters away.
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's close. Yeah.
But it was a long shoot.
It was a long shoot.
It's not that much of a long shoot. It's 46 days, which is not enough.
That's something that's recurrent in your film. It's the way you use music and the way you use other form of arts. So I wanted to hear a little bit from you. Are you thought about, using music from that era, and then using music that's close to you? You often work with the same artists, the same musicians. You're very knowledgeable about music. And how you interact this sort of art into something that's quite different?
Yeah, in this case, in the case of this film, it was very difficult because I genuinely had no idea how of what kind of music I would use. I knew that I would use some. I mean, I've been working with Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth since Demon Lover, so that's a quarter of a century ago. So I knew I wanted to use him for the punk rock part of the score. I knew that I wanted to use, of course, Russian pop songs of that period. I mean, the kind of this post-disco stuff that people were dancing to in those years. So of course it gives some reality to the environment of the film. But apart from that, I had no idea, and at some point I discovered this Italian musical genius, Franco Battiato. He's really an extraordinary artist, and he was one of the pioneers of electronica, and he did pop songs. He did stuff with the British Royal Orchestra, whatever it's called. I mean, he was also a classical musician, and one of his later works was a project going back to electronica, and he made this one unique, really weird album, and I thought it was the right mood for the film, and I used a lot of his stuff. But music in many ways is much more wallpaperish in this film than in my other movies. I mean, in my other movies, I use
directly.
Yes, here it's more like ambient. Here it's more like ambient, and I approached it and figured it out like step by step. It was to me, it was one of the most difficult movies to score. I mean, out of all the movies I've made.
I love the score, and I felt there was still a lot of your soul in the way you use music, even so it's quite different process. But I think it works really well also. So,
I'll give a funny anecdote. I got your Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. Yeah. So mine was like, we shot this film in like January to April. My Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year, it was like my top 5 artists, like my top 2. One was Christoph Penderecki, who I was listening to a lot of while doing this, and the next was Kanye West. And I was like, when did it? And then I was like, oh my God, I listened to that for like 4 months while making The Wizard of the Kremlin. And now, at the end of the year, my Spotify Wrapped has come back to haunt me. That Penderecki and Kanye were seeing me through this piece.
Can you talk a little bit about working with Yorick Le Saux as a cinematographer on the film?
I love Yorick. And we go way back, because he started. I mean, he was like out of film school when I gave him. He operated the B camera when we were doing late August, early September. We're talking in 1990.
He was very young.
He was extremely young. Yes. I mean, he was right out of film school. I mean, it was like a year out of film school, and then he worked on he did B camera, but a lot more stuff when we were making Demon Lover. He did the making of. He shot the making of, and I think the first film we did together was Boarding Gate in 2006, and we never stopped working together ever since. I mean, Yorick is. I mean, I've been extremely lucky with the cameraman I've worked with. I mean, Denis Lenoir is a remarkable artist. So is Eric Gauthier. I mean, they are really. They are really the best. With Yorick, there's some. I kind of. I mean, I think Denis Lenoir would object to that. Denis Lenoir keeps on saying that it's the director who makes the image, and I don't agree with him. I understand what he means, but because he feels that different filmmakers expect different things from their cameraman, and so he means by that they push them in different directions. I understand his point, but I think I think the way I function, I function with cameraman is slightly different, because I expect from my cameraman possibly I end up having a feeling that the cameraman has a very important creative input. I mean, in the way I function, even if it doesn't really, even it's not obvious. I think that the movies I've made with Denis are not the same as the movies I've made with Eric Gauthier, and and the movies that I've been making with Yorick Le Sceau are also different from the others. I mean, in profound ways, because for instance, Yorick Le Sceau, because he did this film, so he's the one we're talking about. Yorick needs to have an input. I mean, he brings ideas. He has suggestions. You know, I come on a set in the morning and I explain him, okay, we're going to do this and that, and he asks me, why don't we do the opposite? Why don't we try and do this? Because it's really interesting, because you have this perspective there, and you can, and if you pan, you get this, you get that. I mean, and he brings a lot of material, a lot of stuff that kind of makes me reconsider what I thought was final in terms of my. So he gives me freedom, because he constrains me to reinvent the shots, and he's always game for trying the craziest things and the weirdest things, and I think that out of the cameramans I've been working with, Yorick is the most creative, the most inventive, and he's the nicest person, you know, which is an important part also of the mysterious art of filmmaking.
We have a few minutes to take audience question, and we have microphone, right? Yes. She's talking about the character Xenia.
Yeah.
And where she's going.
Where do you live?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's what I did. Xenia is an addition to the novel. She's really a shadow in the novel. So when I read the book and when I started thinking about adapting it, I mean, one of the key elements was that I wanted to give a lot more space to the character of Xenia, because Xenia is has some kind of moral compass, and she's the one who asks the tough questions to Vadim Baranov, and also, even more importantly, to me, she embodies the energy that she lives the life that the post-Soviets of her generation could have lived if they had not been crushed by the Putin dictatorship. And we are constantly reminded that there was this generation of young Russians who thought they would change the world, who thought that the world was open for them, and because the gates had slightly opened and then it slammed back closed. And there's something very sad about it. There is something heartbreaking about it, and I like the idea of a character who would constantly remind, through her freedom of movement, through her freedom of expression, and so on and so forth, what could have been the fate of that generation. I wanted to keep that note echoing through the film, and it does echo through Xenia.
I came today with a lot of curiosity and skepticism, because I simply couldn't imagine how this very dense novel with its long first-person narrative could ever be turned into a film. And congratulations, I think it was done absolutely brilliantly. I didn't see how the character, Baranov, could be portrayed in a film. It just seemed like such a sort of empty vessel. And Paul, I thought you did a magnificent job of giving this person real life. It does stay very close to the novel in a lot of ways. You didn't let, I guess your insurance people wouldn't let Xenia jump into the water at the end there, into the icy water. But the very last scene...
It was fairly cold when we shot the scene. It was very cold.
But I was very surprised by the ending, because in the novel, Baranov is just totally absorbed with his love of his daughter, and the narrator just sort of quietly goes out and closes the door behind him.
Yeah.
And this was a very different ending, and I'm just wondering what led you to make that decision.
It was my decision. I mean, not everybody was convinced, but I mean, while making the film, while shooting the film, seeing the character live and strategize, gave me a feeling that I couldn't deal with the idea of seeing him live in peace with his crimes, so I decided to get rid of him.
As a director, it's your prerogative.
But it was also really striking for me, because in the first version of the script I read, that ending was not there, and Olivier came up with it later, and yeah, to me it feels like the filmmaker or God saying, this is your comeuppance, right? This is what you. I also think that since the book was written, the situation has become only more grave. And at a certain point, when you're making something, the fear of lionizing it, is a part of it, because it is in a narrative form, your main character is your hero. Do you know? So I felt relieved and inspired by the new ending when I read it. It was shocking to me, because we were already there in Latvia and we were already going to make the movie. But then I felt like it was potentially really powerful and maybe important, a distinction from the book.
But we shot 3 different versions of the ending. We shot the one that was in the screenplay. We shot one that was suggested by Paul. I mean, I kind of covered my ass, but I was convinced I was right. I mean, I knew I was right. He deserves it.
But Paul, also, you're a director and you've directed films, so I'm sure you had a different way of seeing this, not just as an actor, but as a director, what else? Like, well, would I do the same thing or not?
Well, yeah, that's not, but I've made one film. I love film. I do try to approach the work looking at the whole and not just about me and my character, right? You're taking care of a story. No, the opposite though. I think it's important to be looking at the whole piece, what you're saying, and not just have it be about that. So again, we did flirt with these other ideas, and because they'd been with us for a while, so I was glad Olivier covered his ass, so to speak. And again, when you're making a film, we've got a couple days. We had 4 days, I think, at Baranov's house, right? And suddenly it's the sun setting, and you're shooting the end of the film, and the pressure's on, right? And especially if you want to shoot, an alternate in case. And but I think we all felt and hoped and wished and wanted this to be the ending. What was the ending?
Was it the last ending you shot? This one?
No, this is the first. I mean,
this is the first.
This is the first.
We shot them all on the same day, though.
The same day.
And it was towards the end of the shooting.
It was towards the end of the shoot. Absolutely. Yeah. We finished the shoot at the house.
I wish we had more time to talk about the film, but you will have to come back. It's easy to get you back. It's easier, but
Yes, Olivier.
you need to travel more here. It was really, really great to have you here and to talk about the film. Thank you so much for coming.
The first screening in the U.S., I think, of
It's
the
the
film,
first
right?
screening
Yeah,
in the
great.
US,
All
yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's another screening next week, and the movie is opening in May. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.